15 years almost now, since I started in this corp environment. Had around 2014, I had a stroke, brain stroke. Wasn't expecting. I was 29 years old. Never really checked my brain before that. I think we usually don't do that. But it was, yeah. But well, I mean, in my case, really never thought. I didn't have anything in family that could be, potential thing. Not even really heart disease, and it was always super active, like as I said, like sports, not really into drugs, like going to nutritionist, like taking care of my diet. But then in a very ordinary day, like I went to work, and not nothing special happening in terms of stress and anything. And then that morning was a normal morning, and then we had a lunch together. I was celebrating a friend's birthday, and then during the lunch, I just felt that what happened was literally like at the very end, my left arm. So I look at my left arm. So kind of things start like I kind of got lost in a moment. I couldn't really think it was what was happening because I never felt that. And then my left arm, I remember seeing my left arm like just frame by frame. Like I use the film Matrix as an example, that you have those scenes that is everything very slow and frame by frame. That's the first thing that I remembered when everything happened. So seeing my arm moving that way, then not finding answers, just that fraction of time that okay, what is that? Like what I'm feeling here, it's not really clear now. And it's never felt something like that. So the funny thing is, I didn't say anything to any friend because I was still like normal, even though I wasn't there anymore, but I was still like normal behaving. And I was trying my way to figure out what was happening. And then so I remember three moments. I remember that moment. I remember me going to the checkout and finding a way to pay the bill. That was really funny. Password, like I really found a way to pay it. And then the third moment was crossing the street. It was a very calm street. So I remember just checking cars and then crossing the street. And after that, I don't remember anything. And then still after that was going to the car, getting in, and then, I wasn't driving. Funny thing is, I was always driving that day specifically. And then, is the universe showing something that day specifically? I wasn't driving. And I don't remember anything. I don't remember going to the car. I don't remember anything else. But that was my first seizure that I had. And then I just woke up in the hospital, and that was the moment that I got information. So the doctor came into the room and he said, "Hey, Samuel, nice to meet you. Just, you were here just to inform you that you had a stroke in your left side in the back. And then now you're doing all the exams. We are still exploring, still trying to figure out what happened and exactly the region." So that was 2014, July. Imagine that was the year of World Cup. So I was in the middle of the World Cup as well. So it's funny because it was a very special moment for the country. People were celebrating. Like I remember going to, fan zone with my partner and with friends. So it was very a celebrating moment in the country, and then for all of us, like we will face it soon in 1 month. Even though you can be into football or not, you still get the vibe, right? Like a positive environment. And so that was early July. And when that happened for me, of course, me speaking here, I spoke so many times about that. And sometimes in the small groups, people just reaching out, like just one-on-one. Sometimes just people very curious to know about what happened. And then, you feel good in sharing and trying to encourage people to see in different ways. But and then, of course, at that moment, I was crying as like a baby. Like it's information that at the age of 29 you would never expect your late 20s, you got a stroke, and then and then the doctor said, hey, you had this stroke. Now we are checking a couple of things. And then he left. And then after that, of course, family, and couldn't have many visits, but it was mainly family and my partner. So it was basically that. And then the doctor came after saying, okay, we have two options to you. We just checking everything after a couple of exams, right? Later that day, so afternoon, he came back and he said, so we have two situations here. One is that we have to actually make a decision together here. So of course, my family was not there at the moment. It was only with me. So for information, so the doctor saying, so we have two options. One is we leave as it is now. I was with the tool, right? Removing the blood. We just remove that, let the blood drain the blood, and then we keep as it is. Or the option B was we go into surgery and then we remove that part. And then, of course, I was like, wow, okay, we have two options and two very different options, right? Even though, anyway, the goal was the same, but one was, yeah, like it's just waiting for something, which is something that he mentioned, like we cannot guarantee that we will never have that again. You can eventually have. The other one is, okay, like I'm going to the situation where I will lose completely the control of that situation. So everything will be on the doctor's side. So he will be responsible for things. On this side, so if you that on the left here, so keeping as it is, I would be leaving like a bomb because it could eventually happen. On the other side, making the decision of going to a surgery because of the region where happening. The region is connected with the language and the speech, right? So your ability of speaking and also the movement of your right arm. So it's always reflecting, right? From the left to it's all about your right, and the opposite as well. So that was actually thing that he said, like, if you decide to go into surgery, there is the risk, and that is the risk. It's 50-50 because it's a brain, right? So it's something that it's just so special, let's put it that way, that it can actually go to any direction. And then he left, and he said, and that, hey, I give you this night, have a conversation with your family, have a conversation with your partner, and then next morning we will speak about that. And then he left the room, and I was just, as I said, I was just crying. Like, it's funny to go through the story and be very brave and say that everything happened, but in the end, actually, you're a very sad situation which will impact the rest of your life, right? Like either way. And then in the meantime, my parents, they were checking. Of course, because of the ambulance, I went straight to the public hospital, but I could actually eventually go to a private hospital. You keep that in mind that maybe there you will be, get better doctors or things like that. So my parents, in the meantime, they were checking and trying to get information about the doctor, about, whatever they could do, like to just provide me, better solution. But it actually, in the end, I was with a very good, well-known doctor. The guy was really like a well-experienced, a very old person, like, went through a lot for sure. And then they came back to me like saying that. And the funny thing, like, they didn't want to say a word about the decision. Like they were very clear that it's up to you. Like it's on you to really decide if you want to go into surgery or not. Because in the end, it's your decision, it's your life, and I'm very glad to have that or to go through something like this, because today, whatever happens to me or whatever happened to me in between, like since 14 to now, I know the decision was mine. That was me actually deciding that this is what I want, which sometimes cannot be, right? Sometimes like it's just someone trying to solve the problem for you, but and then you kind of have this accountability, like that was me. So I'm very glad that that decision, even though probably they didn't think in that way, but that's the way how I read nowadays. So what happened is, so I decided to take to go into surgery, and happy that anything happened right after the morning after I woke up with still speaking with a movement of my right arm. So just felt okay, everything went well, and next step. But the truth is, like, during the period you have three questions, right? So the first one is usually why me, right? Like, when you get this information, when you have a stroke, you start questioning why me, why me. That's a very natural thing whenever, whatever happens in life, right? And then you have the second one, which is what now, right? So what now, it's the decision that I made between both that I had. And then the third one is what next, right? What is next? And then the what is next is something that you can you can really not even, you can have a roadmap, or just have a very clear path, but you don't really have any control, right? So when I had the surgery, it was just the starting point, it wasn't actually the finishing line. Like, that was literally when I left, I thought, like, I remember the doctor say, hey, from now on, you probably will have some seizures here and there. So that's why you need to take this medication here. And I remember saying to him, no, I will take this every day. I won't have any, trust me. Yeah, little I knew that actually was completely out of my control, that one. So that's the reason why I say, like, that wasn't actually the finish line, it was actually just the starting point of a completely new journey of my life. The funny thing is, the meantime, like, everything that I'm saying here, I was still working. Of course, I was away for between 3, 4, 5 months, well appreciated by the company. Nice way of treating the situation. So that moment, so that it was when everything changed, right? So my life was over. Like, the life that I knew was over. From that moment towards would be a completely new Samuel, and that's pretty much what happened. And then since then, I do have, of course, managed. The very beginning, like the first 3 years, was a roller coaster. Like, was just everything was happening at the same time. Like, I was having many seizures, like every 10, 15 days I was having seizures. And then trying to find the medications, like how many pills you take per day. Like, you take a lot or you go down, and if you go down, like, you have more seizures. If you go up, like, you get very you get away, like, it's just too many. Nowadays I still take 10, 11 pills per day. So I'm right now I already took like 4 or 5. So that's big, it's still like, this is one of the elements that you have to take into account. Like, okay, this is now part of my life. So the life that I was used to, never really took medicines or pills during the day. Like, now I have to take 10, 11. um so yeah, so then the first 3, 4 years, it was just a roller coaster. Like, was having a series, was going to work, was having series around my team, in the middle of meetings, having presentations, after the presentation, having it. It was, it's just a lot happening at the same time. And then relationship wise, also it impacts, right? Because you don't, at least that's my story, right? Like, I always like to clarify that what happened to me, and the way how I navigated and still navigating the situation. um so at that moment I didn't know that I was depressed. Like, I was just believing that, yeah, I will keep doing my stuff here, even though it's happening. So I never really realized that I was very down, and it wasn't really dealing, like, for instance, with my partner in the way how I should. Simply because you don't realize. And it's just, is for me, it wasn't that. I was, yeah, maybe I'm depressed and I should think about it. I should visit some doctors, blah blah blah. It wasn't really part of. I was just thinking about, like, medications and doctor and how can I get out of this cycle of having seizures and all that. So yeah, so that was 3 years of a lot of things happening, but at the same time, 3 years of learning. And then I think I can now start bringing back what I said, but the way how I approach life, or which is a bit of my identity as well, or family, coming from, education of my family and the way how they also taught me in terms of life and the way of living. As you mentioned, like coming from an Italian family, Portuguese family, growing up in Brazil, all these elements, like you approach life in a different way. I'm not saying that it was easy, but that it's, of course, like it maybe was one of the elements. But I remember one specific moment that not, it wasn't a Eureka moment, that thing, but I remember that it was very strong to me that after a couple of I don't remember exactly in between. Like it was probably like my second and third year in that situation. I remember my partner approaching me saying, "Hey, listen, don't get me wrong. Not exactly those words, but don't get me wrong. But I'm kind of sick of this situation where people are just approaching me to ask how you are and actually not asking how I am." And the truth is, she was going through pretty much everything as I was going through. Like she was going to the hospital, she was seeing me, having those seizures, and she was pretty much the person that was with me all the time, like going from her work to my office and then from there to the to the hospital. And this is just one thing, right, to mention. And that was one of the main moments that I realized, okay, Samuel, that's stop to feel good when people feel sorry about you, because it's there is a addiction here, right? Because it's really like a 360, and I would say like a cycle. So you feel bad, or maybe you're feeling better, and then you go and you have a seizure. The seizure, you get some I'm sorry from people, right? So people feel sorry about the situation. That situation kind of creates a reward in your brain that release dopamine, and this dopamine makes you feel better. But the problem was I was once again better. The problem I was having so often that I was always going back to the first step. So I was never really ending that process. Um, and at some point, I just started realizing, like, yeah, man, like, you've been doing your best in everything work wise, like trying to perform, like since when you start, or trying to get better as a person and blah blah blah. And then at some point you're just kind of giving up, like you're just waiting to people to feel sorry about it. And this actually impacting your also relationship and the relationship with family as well. So change your mind, change your mindset, change the way how you're approaching it. And that was around this time was when I start to realize that, okay, what can I do to change it? And I start, visiting some different doctors. I start reading a little bit more about it. I start watching more, interviews, or trying to understand people's story, how they went through it. So a few things that combined kind of helped me. I think that the one that is, even though once again it's about work, but the determination of I want to prove myself that I can be the same guy that is used to deliver. I want to be the same guy now, even though I went through the situation. I think that also was a very strong element in my my process to overcome the situation. So yeah, that's a bit of the introduction, maybe, of where I'm coming from during this period of time. Like, even though in the meantime I was working, and just to clarify, everything around was still happening.
That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing, first of all, Samuel. I think it's very courageous that you show up and you actually share that story. How did you manage to not fall into that trap, and how long did it take you to fully actually let go and redefine your identity?
That was tough. Yeah, indeed, it was tough. Like, I can give an example that also was, yeah. one of the highlights of my process was so I grew up playing music and I grew up playing instruments and always singing along and playing along music. And I remember when I was in my very first 6 months or even a year, I was not able anymore to play along music because just my coordination just wasn't there anymore. Like it's just a side effect of the medication. Also, of course, the stroke. So that was one of, if I before I mentioned about the career, that was another one of no man, I need to get better. Like this is my passion. Like it's really like music in general and playing is something that really it's my therapy, to be honest. In that situation, I also understood very well that this was very important to after work. I always go back to home and play at least for 30 minutes because of the therapy and also because I wanted to make sure that I was able again to play and feel that I'm playing well at least. So yeah, so that was one of the chapters, right? So the hope you as I said before, like it's kind of natural that you start thinking and questioning yourself. Like it's just you're not the same anymore. So that's clear, like, and you have to face it, and learn and accept it. Learn from that. So once again, like if I wasn't able anymore to play, I have to learn again. So that is the learning process of that specific thing that I used to do. If I'm not anymore allowed to surf because I can have surgery inside, so I cannot surf anymore. Okay, accept it because you cannot change. Like it is something that is it always it's that's funny because whenever you are in a situation, depending on what happens, you always bring back the why me, right? Oh fuck, I cannot surf anymore. Something that it's such a special, this is such a special moment. Not about how good you are. It's about, going out there, having time with your friends and exchanging with the ocean, all the process. That is actually what is special for me in terms of surfing. I wasn't able anymore. But okay, accept it because you cannot change anymore. Like it's something that happened and you cannot change anymore. And then it is just more the exercise of bring it back again. What is next? What you can identify as a solution to not being able to surfing? Is there any other thing that can potentially help you also to get better, to feel more confident? That because there are a lot of situations that you lack a lot of confidence, right? In many different scenarios. And then I kind of found I started experimenting and once again learning new things. And tennis came as a solution for me. So also helped me to okay, I want to become. I always try to treat myself as a professional athlete. I'm not far from it, but okay, try to be it now. I learned a little bit too late, let's say. But anyway, like let's try to be the best you can be in terms of tennis player. Like so, I start seeing that as my learning process when it comes to sport. Right? Of course, I kept doing some sports, and as we mentioned, like snowboarding, because wasn't that danger. Even though it's still the brain, it's still right your head, but always taking care. So you start finding or trying to find things that would bring you the confidence as again, or help you to accept the situation and bring back the hope. In the end, yeah, in the end, it's a matter of it's an exercise of just do your best to accept it. Like, it's not changing. Like you change it, and it's just accepted and do your best based on what you are now to really keep growing and aiming to become a better and better person every day. Not sure if I'm answering exactly or I'm just kind of giving the whole context. But yeah, that was a yeah, big moment.